please tell us a little bit more about the DNA Project?
I started the DNA Project following my father's murder because I recognized that there were issues in regard to not only the way in which crime scenes were handled generally by a number of people, but also that we had this amazing technology called DNA, and we needed laws to assist us in using it to its best advantage. And when I did the research, DNA evidence was the gold standard in terms of crime scene investigation. So I gave up my job as a commercial attorney, which is a far cry from what I'm doing now, and I started this organization with a number of objectives. The first was crime scene awareness, and we literally train anybody and hopefully everybody who is willing to listen to us. And that is from school children to security guards to community members. I've just come back from a workshop in Limpopo where I was training magistrates on the provisions of the new law. There was nobody, I don't think, in South Africa who shouldn't hear what we have to say in terms of understanding what forensic evidence is and understanding their role in protecting the evidence. The second aspect is that in order to use DNA to its best advantage, you need a database of profiles. You need to be collecting DNA profiles from every person who's arrested and every convicted offender in much the same way we do with fingerprints, so that when we find biological evidence on a crime scene, we can enter that onto the database, the DNA profile, and we can compare it to the reference profiles that we have. In that way, even if we don't have a suspect, we can start linking crimes where otherwise we might not see some kind of attachment. So we could see there's a serial rapist at play here. We can derive criminal intelligence from that, things like modus operandi, location. Is there a specific type of victim that the person is targeting? And we can also then, if we arrest somebody on an unrelated offense at a much later stage, you take the DNA sample, you enter the resultant profile onto the database. It could link that person back to many crimes they've committed in the past. And I always go back to my father's case. If they had collected any of the volumes of forensic evidence and DNA evidence that had been left behind, even though they didn't have a suspect, now that we've got a law that's going to allow us to collect samples from arrestees and convicted offenders, we could still be able to, 10 years later, link somebody back to that initial crime. So that's why we needed to change the law, and I lobbied the government for the last 10 years, and finally in January the law was passed, which now makes it compulsory for arrestees and the convicted offenders submit their DNA sample at the same time of their fingerprints. That profile is entered onto a database, and the forensic investigators, when they collect evidence from a crime scene, are now able to compare it to this reference database. And obviously it's going to take a while to implement, but it's a wonderful mechanism and a wonderful methodology in a country which is crying out for tangible solutions, I believe, for crime resolution.
So as the law now stands, that means any new arrestee will have their DNA profiled or logged. What about people who are in prisons already, or perhaps getting out on parole?
They will be included. It's a retrospective act. It's not yet operational, in that the operational date is probably going to be the 1st of October. They need to train the police to take the buccal samples, which is a simple cheek swab. So the police on arrest, the detective who takes the fingerprints, will also be trained to take this very simple, it looks like a large earbud, a very simple cheek swab, and it takes approximately 30 seconds. In fact, if the person requests to take it themselves, they can do so under supervision, and that then is sent to the laboratory. So at the moment they are training the police to do this, and hopefully by the beginning of October we're going to start seeing this coming into place. Over the next 5 years we will obviously see the growth of the database. It's not going to happen overnight, but you can understand the potential. And in countries with developed DNA databases, they've got over 12 million profiles on their databases in the UK and in the USA. Compared to South Africa, we currently only have about 130,000. Their hit rate, which means that the moment they put an unknown profile, which is collected from a crime scene, whether it's hair or semen or saliva, they put that profile onto their databases, they have an over 68% chance of an immediate match to somebody on that database. So you can imagine it would be a game changer in us creating accountability in a country where the criminals are reoffending. We don't have one crime per criminal, and this will definitely reduce the rate of recidivism that we have in this.